Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. بیننده تلویزیونی ایمان و برنامه نکاس، السلام علیکم و رحمت الله. امیدوارم صحت و سلامت باشین و هفته خوش را سپری کرده باشین و عقب گذاشته باشین و زیاد شما را به انتظار نمیمانیم. قراره که میبینید یک میمان بسیار معزز و یک میمان بسیار عزیز از ساودرن کالیفرنیا، از کالیفرنیای جنوبی داریم همراه خود که انشاءالله درباره‌اش زیادتر میفهمین. و این برنامه خود ما قصداً وقت‌تر شروع کردیم و از خاطر اینکه سفرشان به حساب 1 ساعت 2 ساعت بعد سفر میکنن دیگه زیاد شما رو به انتظار نمیمانیم. صحبت‌های دیگر در باقی جریان گپ‌های خود میگیم براتون. و این میمان عزیز ما احسان جان ترابی هستند که فقط با چند کلمه که شما سلام علیکی میکنن انشاءالله باز با معرفیش میپردازیم. و این برنامه ما به انگلیسی میباشه برای که اکثر جوانایی که میخواین بشنون صحبت‌های از این جوانی که بسیار کار کرده زحمت کشیده این قسمت که شما زیادتر دربارش انشاءالله معلومات پیدا میکنین، شما را در جریان میمونیم. احسان جان بسیار خوش آمدید در برنامه ما. سلام علیکم.
سلام و رحمت الله حبیب جان.
سلامت باشید.
تشکر که ما را خواستین امروز اینجا. سلام برای شما، سلام برای همگی دوستای ما که از طریق تلویزیون کمی پروگرام میبینن. السلام علیکم و رحمت الله تعالی و برکاته.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ihsan John, I'm so happy that you're here and I had an opportunity to sit with you and reflect what you have in your heart and your mind, inshallah, through this program of reflection. And last week we had a great week with Sheikh Tamar, and I got a lot of calls and response because of that, and really interesting subjects. And inshallah, we'll talk. Ihsan Tarabi actually, he lives in San Diego, and he finished UC San Diego, and he's got his master. He's master in education media design, which is a very complicated field. I don't know much about it, but probably he's going to mention himself. And currently, he's self-employed, and he's working on mostly the foundation that he has actually formed, and he's working it is not official yet, but it's the Ihya Foundation, Ihya. So he's going to talk more about it. So Ihsan John, welcome again.
Thank you.
And it's going to be very, very close talk, friendly talk, and inshallah our audiences, mostly our Afghan brothers and sisters, and most of them they know English, alhamdulillah. And we're trying to get the attention of their youth to watch this program, because this is the reason I'm here in front of you. So, do you have anything to say before we go on?
Thank you again, Habib John, for inviting me on for the show. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm very happy to actually have this opportunity to speak to our community, the Afghan community, the Muslim community, especially the youth, because I think that more and more our community is losing touch with the essence of what it means to be a Muslim and the essence of Islam. And I think what I see happening, especially among the younger generation, is this loss of something very valuable and precious that can give us meaning and value and purpose and direction in our lives, and really happiness and fulfillment, contentment. And it's sad to see many of our youth not having access to that, because I think of the way that sometimes Islam is portrayed or even presented to them. So most of my work now really is focused on bringing back awareness to some of what has been seemed to have been lost or forgotten with regards to the deeper and the more meaningful aspects of Islam. We have the form, Habib John, right? Of course, as you know.
Yeah.
The practices, the forms, the obligations, but then we have a whole other dimension of Islamic practice that really is the heart and soul of Islam. And that's the inner dimension, the part that really has to do with how a person is feeling and how a person is experiencing life, as well as their spirituality.
Exactly.
So most of my work is now focused on bringing back more attention, awareness to this. So we launched, as I've had a chance to share with you, Soul of Islam Radio,
Right.
which is a global podcast.
That's a great.
Yeah, it's a global podcast available throughout the world, available on iTunes as well as YouTube, anywhere you can download it for free. And on that one, we speak about these subjects that we think are relevant
Yes.
for our generation especially within the Western world now.
Western world, right. Yeah.
Islamic topics that are relevant and hopefully helpful to them in their lives, practical.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, the work with the Ihya Foundation to kind of continue this work of reviving the essence, the heart, the soul, the spirituality of Islam.
Very good. So, Alhamdulillah, and this introduction to what you're doing, and our goal is to find out more about your radio station and the project that you have more. Inshallah, we're going to come to that later on. Sanjan, I think you born in the US or outside? And now
Actually, I was born in Afghanistan.
Rasti?
Okay. Bali, and family Ahmad, and they came when we were very young. I was about 4 years old.
That's it.
So I primarily grew up in the US.
That's important to know, because the reason I'm asking, Alhamdulillah, I'm sitting here for one reason. And when we left Afghanistan, I was like 23 years old, 22. Half of my life, you know what I mean, was spent over there. Everything we had after this muhajirat, we call it, and migration after Soviet invasion, right? Most of us left because of that. And before that in the US, I was here before the refugee flood started coming to the West. And there was 90 people living in the whole Bay Area, 90 people or 90 plus. And I was one of them, but I came as a temporary. And then I went back. And the reason I'm saying that, and after that migration and after Soviet invasion and all those things, people start flooding, going all over. So we had something about our deen back then, but the knowledge was lacking of knowledge of understanding deen, you know, the way we're supposed to know. And the whole thing started when we came and we left Afghanistan. Alhamdulillah, our fathers and fathers, everything, may Allah bless them, you know what I mean? They did their part, but one thing was missing. We didn't know our deen the way I know today. And you guys have the luxury that at least he came in during this. The question is, I'm just going back to the youth, because the fathers and the elders pass the torch to youth, right? Mm-hmm. If they are Muslim, alhamdulillah, they give that gift to their kids, right? They fall in their laps. And what they want to do with that, that's the question. I'm asking you, as a youth, you've grown up in this country, how do you find the faith as far as concerned to youth? How you find their faith? Are they what do you talk about? What's your understanding about their faith right now? And what's the problem they have? And that they are faithful or not? And that's the question.
I think what I see, Habib John, mostly is the youth are very sincere. They have good hearts. They have a lot of love for Islam and for the Quran, a lot of respect and love for the Quran, for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in their hearts. But I think there's a difficulty in connecting with Islam as a religion sometimes, because of the way, again, that I think it's portrayed or presented.
Right.
And we have to look back at the example of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When he began to call people to Islam, he didn't call them immediately to the forms of Islam. He didn't call them just to the physical practices.
Right.
As we know, the fara'id of Islam came much later. But what he began to call them to was the love of their Creator, the belief in Allah, the love in their Creator, the love for one another, and brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam. He called them to goodness. And if we look at the example of the Prophet ﷺ, he was really working on the hearts of the people for a long time. Yeah. And then the practices came little by little. Nowadays, it seems that just generally, it's almost the other way around. Any interest in Islam, and immediately, okay, you have to pray 5 times a day, you have to fast in Ramadan, you have to give your zakat, and on and on and on. And that's like a lot of weight to carry, and yet the internal development hasn't taken place. So I think what I see with our youth is this need, this desire, this hunger for the spirituality of Islam. And that would make it a lot more easy for them and capable and meaningful for them to carry the physical practices. Right. If we're asking how do we attract the youth back to Islam, we have to attract them through love. Right. We have to attract them to the love and the love of our Prophet ﷺ.
Yes.
And the beauty and the mercy and love that he lived with, that he taught with, and that is the reality of Islam. Not harshness, not rigidity, not difficulty, but it's love that gives fuel, it's love that gives passion, it's love that motivates a human being to do something. And really it's not effective to try to do things by force.
Exactly.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran al-Karim, La ikraha fi din.
Yes.
There is no compulsion and there's no force in the religion. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It may work for a little bit, but eventually it just becomes a burden, a difficulty,
Right.
a hardship.
Right.
And many of the great pious in our ummah, they didn't worship Allah because they were afraid of hellfire. And many of them didn't worship even because they were seeking paradise, but they were in love with Allah.
Yeah.
They were in love. They were in ecstasy in Allah's presence, and that's what. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Yeah.
If we can learn that ourselves, and then be able to give something of that to the youth and let them taste and experience that, there's no need to force anybody to do anything.
Right.
People will run to it. That was my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming to that, I ask you, when did you start practicing your deen? I know we all, alhamdulillah, when we were kids and stuff, we learn how to pray and this and that. But really, your turning point started from when that you got involved to this field?
For me, it was when I was in college, in university. That's when I began to study religion. And we, as part of our actual coursework, we had to look at and study the different scriptural texts, the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, as well as the Quran. So I always had a lot of respect for the Quran. We kept it on the shelf, and it was wrapped beautifully, and I always, and we always kiss it and so on. But I never actually really read it.
Yeah.
So when I started to read these, and at the same time reading the other books as well, everything started to come together. And at that point, I became very passionate about religion, about spirituality. And it was at that time that I really became hungry to seek for truth.
Yeah.
Because I was looking around at the other youth, the students in the college, at the university, and I just saw a very major lack of purpose. People were not looking ahead at really what is life about. They were just engaged in, passing the time and partying and these kind of things, and I just saw it as a lot of emptiness. And I knew there was something more, and that there was something greater for which we've been created. So I just became consumed with this desire to seek truth and meaning and the reality of why we're here. Why did Allah create us?
Purpose of life.
Yeah, exactly. So it was early. It was in my college years.
Yeah. So that was the time you noticed that, right?
Yeah.
So of course, for everybody, there's a turning point, like you said, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that light into your heart, right? So through something and through somebody, and now we come to faith is alhamdulillah, like we said, everybody is born Muslim. We know that for sure. And it depends what your environment, where you grown up, how your parents, your environment, and what bring you up. And also, if you reach the age that you at least know the difference in your adulthood, right, or puberty age, and then this is the time you realize that you're by yourself. That's the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're not responsible till we reach to that puberty age, and after that bulugh, right, bulugh or kuhulat we call it. So now, a lot of people, alhamdulillah, they have faith, but the thing is missing practice. And I see everybody say, and they say, alhamdulillah, I'm Muslim, my name is a Muslim name, my family is Muslim, but they're not practicing, and this is a very, very common thing we hear. I'm asking you, Hassan, if you can tell me that, why they're not practicing it, if they have faith, like you said, what moves them to practice? And
again, I think it's a lot. So number one, it's knowledge.
Knowledge, right? Yeah.
A lot of it is knowledge and understanding really what the practice is about and why we even practice to begin with.
Right.
Are we practicing because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs us to practice for Him to be happy with us? Is that the reason for practice? And when we realize that all of Islam is a gift, all these practices are actually for our benefit, then it makes the practice very different and something I have to do to try to make God happy with me.
Right.
And I think more and more people are finding that hard to relate to. This idea that I have to practice just, why doesn't God accept me the way I am, for example? Or He created me, so why do I have to do this and do that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Islam as a gift to us, and all of these practices are for our benefit, for our health, for our wellness, for our fulfillment, for our peace. Islam literally means peace. The root word is salam, it's peace.
Yeah, right.
And through that spiritual path of Islam, surrender, one can reach to peace. If we look at all the practices, whether it's the prayers, the salah, the fasting, the psalm, or the zakat or the hajj, everything is so tremendously beneficial for us as human beings. And when the practice is approached not just as an obligation, but as an actual practice designed to heal us, it becomes so much more powerful. So why do we pray, for example? I always ask people, why the prayer? Are you doing this because you think that Allah needs this? Because He doesn't need it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need my prayers, your prayer, nobody's prayers.
Right.
But why did He reveal this to us? And the root word of salah means connection.
Right.
It's to connect. So when we pray, it's actually, if it's done properly, with the right intention and with the right practice, it's a divine opportunity to connect with Allah. Really to connect in a real way, not just theoretically, but to be immersed in His presence. And when we look at the practice of the earlier generations, that's what they were experiencing. They looked forward to their prayer as a refuge, as a rest from the dunya, from the world. The dunya the prayer was an opportunity to rest and to be with Allah. And that's the relationship they had. If we can again approach it from that direction, it's something that we want to do. It's not something we're forced to do, but something that actually gives us joy.
Yeah. Beautifully said, I agree with you totally. So now the subject of Iman comes in play, right? So you gotta have that Iman. Iman is there, but you have to just manifest it in a way, and there's a way to do that. And in order to just make you strong, Iman actually more stronger or manifest as a youth, what do you think? What our youth supposed to do? What kind of activities and what kind of practices they should engage with in order to just the Iman increase?
Well, we can go back to the Quran Kareem and to the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. And there are many practices within Islam that the Iman wavers. It fluctuates. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. And it depends on a lot of factors. But the one practice that is recommended above all others is dhikr. Dhikrullah. The Prophet ﷺ recommended to make dhikr. He said, keep your tongue moist with dhikr. And if there's one thing you can do, never leave the remembrance of Allah. Dhikrullah. That is the one thing that really, if it's done with consciousness, with mindfulness, with intention, with presence, has a tremendous effect directly on the heart. It will awaken the heart. It puts light into the heart. So we can do dhikr just, tasbih, for example, sort of mindlessly, and Allah subhanahu. But if we do it in a state of mindfulness and meditation, if we do it in a state of presence, with the full awareness and understanding and consciousness and intention that we're connecting with Allah, then a spiritual light really begins to develop in the heart. That increases Iman, that increases our love for our ibadah, for our practice, for our connection with Allah and with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
You said something about dhikr. A lot of people, they think dhikr is just doing tasbih, and in our community and stuff, we see that they bring all these other beans and this and that. So people have different understanding of dhikr, right? But when you say remembrance of Allah, and this take us to ihsan, the third part of after Islam, Iman, Islam, and ihsan, right? So, and if people don't understand this aspect, and this aspect of Islam, like ihsan is there, and your name is Ihsan, alhamdulillah, too. So, can you talk a little bit about that to our youth, in a simple way, that what does it mean as far as to relate that with zikr, right? Because that comes from somewhere.
Actually, this is a very good question. Thank you, Habib John, because it's very important. Because there's this very famous story in the life of the Prophet towards the end of his ministry, towards the end of his time, where a man came, and I won't say the whole hadith now because it's very long, but it was Jibreel alayhi salam, and he began to ask the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, what is Islam? Tell me about Islam. And then the Prophet ﷺ answered, Islam is the 5 pillars. He gave him the 5 pillars of Islam. Then Jibreel alayhi salam said, what is Iman? And then the Prophet mentioned the 6 articles of faith. And then he said, Ya Rasulullah, what is Ihsan? And the Prophet ﷺ then said, to worship Allah as if you are seeing Him. even if you're not seeing him, to know that he is watching you.
Exactly.
So, and then a little bit later, then Jibreel alayhi salam left. The Prophet told his companions, do you know who that was? That was Jibreel, who came to teach you your religion.
Yeah.
To teach you what is this religion. And from this, the great ulama and the scholars and the shuyukh have deduced that there are these three stages in Islam. Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And even there's this ayah in Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to these new Bedouins that have come and become Muslim, and they call themselves mu'mins,
Right.
He said, don't say you're believers, you're not mu'min yet. You've come into Islam, but Iman has not yet entered into your heart.
Right.
So there's these three different stages, Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Islam is the physical practices.
Right.
Iman is now moving internal.
Right.
We're moving inward. And this is what you believe. And not just in your mind, but really it's about belief in the heart. Belief in Allah, belief in the angels, belief in the prophets, belief in the holy books, belief in the day of judgment, belief in destiny. This is now internal. And then we continue to go internal to Ihsan, this maqam al-Ihsan, this station of spiritual excellence, where one is really aware and awake and alive in the presence of God. Their connection with Allah is very strong. They're always aware of Allah's presence. Ghafil neistan.
Yeah.
They're not ghafil.
Yeah.
They've become awake. They've woken up.
Yeah.
Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhu said
Yeah.
that all human beings are sleeping.
Right.
They're all asleep. And when we die, we awaken.
Yeah.
Then we see the truth.
Yeah.
So there are those people that reach to that level through their sincerity, through their practice, through their love in this life. They've woken up from sort of the sleep that we all seem to be in.
Exactly.
And that is maqam al-ihsan. That's the goal of Islam. So when we look at mostly how Islam is practiced and presented, it stops at Islam. It's just the physical outermost practices. And really it's about moving inward, moving deeper, into deeper and deeper states of meditation and connection with Allah. And that's really the reality of this religion.
Yeah.
Right? If we ask, how do we get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The goal of Islam is to reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Hadith Qudsi, if you give me permission,
Sure.
yeah, in Hadith Qudsi, very famous, important hadith that was narrated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the Prophet is narrating, that I was a hidden treasure and I wanted to be found, I wanted to be known.
Right.
I was a hidden treasure, Allah is saying. So I created. So if we ask, what is the purpose of creation? Why are we here? One way to answer that is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Ma'rifah.
Exactly, ma'rifah. And we have to also remember that Allah is not outside.
Yes.
We cannot find Allah anywhere outside in this universe, because there's another hadith that the Prophet, Hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, neither the heavens nor the earth can contain me, except the heart of a believer. So that we have to really think about this deeply, because the means to reaching to Allah is inward.
Yeah.
It's within the heart. Your heart is a doorway to the divine presence of Allah. And your heart you have the ability to reach to Allah through your heart. And for that, the practices, the forms must be infused and imbued with spirituality, with presence, with awareness, with mindfulness.
Alhamdulillah, beautifully. I think this is the direction we're trying to go, and it came up that way. We touched based on that. When we talk about ihsan, it's in Allah Jamil Hubbu Jamal, whatever you do, you have to do it in the best way possible, because Allah Himself is beautiful, likes beauty, right? So, and whatever we do, we have to beautify. For example, He said, if you want to just do salah, you have to do it in the best way possible, because you're presenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And you tie it with name of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because that's the beloved, is beloved. So the question comes, there's a lot of misconception about when you talk about the ihsan, and you cannot get away from spirituality and talk about soul. And people they're confused, a lot of people, when you talk about tasawwuf. We talk about it, I think, last week with Dr. Tamar as well. We talk about tasawwuf, to what Sufism comes to play. And people have a misconception about this, because spirituality and Sharia, right? That's one thing that a lot of people, there's a lot of don't and do's and qil and qal, which we understand. But as far as talking about this concept, a Muslim as far as spirituality and Sharia or practice, the way they should be in your eyes?
Well, as Imam Malik said, one of the great shuyukh, one of the great early imams, and one of the founders of the four madahib, said that you have to have both.
Yeah.
And these are like the two wings of a bird.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the outer and the inner,
Right.
the fiqh and sharia as well as the spirituality.
Right.
And only with both can you reach to al-haq, the truth, and the goal. So really it's about balance, and it's like we are bodies. We're not just bodies, but we're
Yeah.
also, there's a soul inside.
Right.
There's a heart, there's a beating heart that gives life to this body.
Right.
In the same way, Islam can't just be a physical body.
Right.
It can't just be a form. It must also have its spirituality, its heart, its soul, in order for it to really be of benefit and to be alive. Otherwise, it's not living. It's not beneficial. And Islam, as it's learned and as it's practiced, both are important, both are essential. The outer and the inner. And what we find nowadays mostly is that the inner is lacking, generally speaking,
Yeah.
especially within the Muslim community. All the focus is on the outer. And I don't mean to diminish the outer, because this is the expression of the beauty, the perfection,
Right.
the excellence, the nobility of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
The outer is the manifestation of the inner.
Right.
But the outer without the inner, what's the value?
Yeah, it's
What's the
empty,
benefit?
Yeah.
And if we just focused on the outer, it's very dangerous,
Yeah.
because then diseases develop in the heart. And you
Yeah.
find this among religious people.
Yeah.
You find this among religious people.
Yeah.
And it's very dangerous, because if the heart is not continually, or the self is not continually being
Yeah.
cleansed and purified of these very negative qualities, then the practice can actually become harmful.
Right.
One must be very careful. There's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ told us that the first few people that will be thrown into hellfire will be a person who was an alim,
Yeah.
a person who gave a lot of charity, and a person who was a martyr, a
Martyr,
shaheed,
shaheed, yeah.
because they didn't do it for Allah. They didn't do it with ikhlas. They didn't do it with sincerity. They did it for fame. They did it for
Riyah.
pride.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means if we are practicing our whole life, we are in risk of that being a sin instead of a benefit for us.
Right.
So we cannot allow our practice to fill us with pride, with self-righteousness,
Right.
with arrogance. This is a great sin in front of Allah. And the believer can't look at anybody else and think that they're better than anybody else.
Right.
This is one of the things that pushes people away from Islam,
Right.
right? Because there's this holier than thou mindset.
Yeah.
Somebody comes into the mosque, they look at people, oh, she's not wearing hijab. Oh,
Yeah.
he didn't pray, or he doesn't know how to pray properly,
Right.
or he's making this mistake. And then you can teach with love and with compassion,
Yeah.
or you can teach with harshness and with
Push them
arrogance,
away.
and that will push them away.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
it's coming from love, it will pull people.
Yeah.
But if it's coming from pride or anything else, it pushes people away.
Yeah.
And we have to be very careful as Muslims to
Yeah.
really purify our practice.
Absolutely.
That's why traditionally most scholars, most Muslims, as soon as they finish their salah, their prayer, they give salams, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The first thing they do is they make istighfar.
Mm.
Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah.
Mm.
Because they know that their prayer is nothing in the presence of Allah.
Exactly.
Allah has malaika praying in perfection.
Yeah.
So what is our prayer? We can't even be mindful and present for 5 seconds, let alone for the entire prayer.
Mhm.
And we cannot think that, oh, I'm doing something great.
Yeah.
We must be very embarrassed of our worship, our ibadah. And the pious people, the humble people, don't give value to their ibadah.
Yeah.
They do it because it's an obligation. They do it because they love Allah.
Exactly.
But they don't do it thinking that they're doing something great. They're embarrassed of their ibadah in Allah's presence because they know it's not sufficient.
We talked about everything so far briefly, but you brought something that was my next question. We talk about love of Allah. You know, I just remember one poem from Rumi, and he said, مرده بودم زنده شدم گریه بودم خنده شدم دولت عشق آمد و من دولت پاینده شدم. You understand, right?
Yeah.
So the same thing you said, we are in a state of heedlessness, or we are خوابستیم تا که بیدار میشیم. This is the same thing, this hadith of Prophet ﷺ also. So now that means the love, when we said دولت پاینده شدم دولت عشق آمد و من دولت پاینده شدم. And then when it comes to your heart, then that's eternal, because that's what the actual ishq. It's not about majazi ishq. I'm talking about haqiqi ishq, haqiqi.
Right.
So talking about that, so the whole thing comes to one thing, and that's the force. Where do you get this love from? Where did it start from? As a youth, I mean, if you could advise youth, they say, okay, good, I want to get my motivation, I want to change my inner, this and that, like you said before. But there's force and there's a motivation to do something. Like if they love, somebody, like I'm talking about, in a dunya world, right? They're going to go after that. But how are they going to find this love of Allah in their heart? How they?
This is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And we have sent him, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a mercy to creation.
Right.
We are humans. We need to relate to something, to someone. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us the most blessed, the most perfect, the most pure of creation, Rasulullah Sayyid Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we fall in love with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will fall deeply in love with Allah. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, is the doorway to Allah's divine presence.
Right.
And if we don't realize the value of our messenger, we will never understand Islam. We will never understand our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The key and the secret and the way and the door is through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why he said, you must believe, you must love me more than you love anything else.
Exactly.
Because he wasn't saying it because he needed that love.
Yeah, I know.
But he was speaking from reality.
Yeah.
Because he was the living embodiment of the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was the most empty, the most selfless, the most humble human being on the planet. The most selfless.
Right.
And he was doing nothing but doing his best to serve Allah. And when we get to know him, you fall in love with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to tune out of all this negativity that sometimes comes up on the media. It's just nothing but darkness, and just focus on the truth. Focus on the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When I found that love, that's what changed everything. Then you want to be like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, that's all.
And the other thing I will say is, it's really vital to find a good teacher, one who is really walking in the footsteps of the Prophet.
Right.
Because if you find somebody like that, humble and sincere and selfless, walking in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will fall in love with that teacher who is the example, the living example of the Prophet. It's a connection, it's a way for us to get to see the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And mashallah, there are good people, there are good teachers, good shuyukh in this world. Right. And Allah has promised they will remain. He will keep this religion alive with good people.
Right.
So if anybody is seeking, awliya Allah. Awliya Allah.
And friends of Allah. Some people say awliya. Not just go to things like that and ask things from that, like we talk about.
No, there are men, there are guides, there are teachers who are leading by example.
Right.
They're not just saying Islam, but they have become Islam.
Yeah.
So when you're with them, you see nothing but love, mercy, beauty, compassion, forgiveness.
Right.
And this is Islam. If this is lacking in Islam, what kind of Islam do we have? Harshness, anger, rigidity,
which
fire?
We have right now. This is the way portrait, right? We don't have it. But the media and the people practice, they don't do their job right. So you brought us to one point, and I was asking you, but you came to that point. Who's Sheikh? Because there's a lot of people say, when you say Sheikh, automatically you say, what's Sheikh? And you can tell a little bit about Sheikh, because a lot of people say without Sheikh or Pir, you can't go, you know what I mean? You can't find your ways. What's your definition of Sheikh?
Well, a Sheikh is a teacher, is a leader. Okay. Literally the word means, one who's a leader. Right. And who, not just somebody with a degree or something, but one who's leading by example.
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. A Sheikh is a leader, and you learn from example. That was the secret of how the Sahaba became perfected with the Prophet ﷺ. They were looking at his example, they were living with him, they were companions of his, and they improved through their companionship with the Prophet ﷺ. Mm-hmm. In the same way, that relationship exists to this very day. There are good people, pious teachers, sincere, humble shuyukh that are living, like I said, and practicing as did the Prophet ﷺ. And if you can find somebody like that, hold tight and do not let go, and take as much benefit from them as you can, because these people are gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. So a sheikh is a teacher, it's a guide, he's a leader, one who is living and following the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ.
Alhamdulillah.
And we need teachers in everything, Habib Jan.
Absolutely.
Islam is the most profound thing we have. So if we need a teacher to learn how to cook, or to study engineering, or to learn martial arts, how can we not understand the need for a teacher when it comes to understanding Islam, the Quran?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we have, is chaos in the world because people are not going through understanding religion through a proper teacher.
Right.
They're taking the Quran, taking things out of
Yeah.
context. They don't know the history behind these revelations of ayah and the hadith. So they're creating really what is the opposite of Islam sometimes,
Right.
through using Quran and hadith to justify the most incomprehensible acts of violence and ignorance, because they're not learning from good teachers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's one condition, like you said before, and you have to observe their actions as well, because apparently they're talking well, they're charming, they have charisma, right? And you fall in love with them. But when you follow in for a little bit and you see what they're teaching or what they're preaching, it doesn't support by their action. And that's the time we should just, walk away from that, because we have people like that. Like you said, may Allah, keep us away from riyah and all this show off and stuff. But some people, they're doing it for dunya purpose too. Even probably they're ghafil. They don't know what they're doing it, but it appears that way. So we should be careful. Do you agree with me on that point?
I do. In fact, Jalaluddin Rumi, there's one poem where he says in English, the fool's gold exists because there's also real gold.
Right.
So it's also a test for us, and also a test of our intention, and it's all part of our growth.
Right.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has arranged things in a way that will always serve our growth. The thing when looking for a good teacher is, number one, are they calling people to Allah
Right.
or to themselves? There's a difference.
Yeah.
And if they're calling to Allah, then that's the first sign. Secondly, are they doing what they say?
Yeah.
Are they living, are they practicing what they are saying?
Exactly.
Then the real teacher, you learn more from their example than you do from their words. And many of the great teachers, they say very little actually.
Absolutely.
And it's not about so much of the knowledge, the information that they're trying to broadcast,
Right.
but it's the living example that they are.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah. I learned so much from you today,
Oh,
Sanjan, and the way you put everything together. Also, a lot of people have this kind of mentality, or there's a concept exists among people when you talk about, say, about sheikh or pir. They think that you also go for intercede and ask from them, to make you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in the meaning to love of Allah, show you how to get there, but just they become astaghfirullah, like in between, you know what I mean, like a partner. And they go to that extent, they case the hands and they just bow down in front of them, or you know what I mean. So, and that's the concept that exists a lot of time, and that's the reason we have problem with tasawwuf or sheikh or pir and stuff, because people put a different image on that. So what do you say about that?
I say it's a real problem. It's a real problem because there's, again, a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. And people are at different levels. So the understanding is, again, we do not find a teacher just to worship a teacher.
Right.
That is not the purpose of Islam. You find a teacher to follow them. So whether you kiss their hands out of respect or you don't kiss their hands, that's not the issue. The issue is, are you actually following in their footsteps? Are you doing what they do? Are you doing what they say? And a lot of these things, it's a big subject. A lot of these things, there are issues of, tawassul and shafa and so on. These are sort of issues of aqeedah and fiqh that have to be sort of dealt with properly.
Exactly.
But the main thing is people have to be sincere in their practice. And we must always be seeking to get to Allah. That's the goal. And a teacher, a sheikh, a guide is someone who helps you on that journey. He doesn't become the goal. The teacher is not the end of that path. He is seeking to take another human being to the Prophet ﷺ, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
It's a divine relationship that leads to Allah Almighty. And that must always, if it ever changes, then there's a problem. If the sheikh is calling people to himself,
right,
instead of to Allah, then there's a problem.
Yeah, you clarified that. I was trying to emphasize on this because a lot of people have this image of, sheikh. And also in Arabic, better than me, sheikh, people reach to a certain age, like above 50 or something. Out of respect, people call him sheikh too. And sometimes people calling me Sheikh Habib, because out of respect. It doesn't mean that I'm a teacher, but out of respect they use that too, so I was trying to simplify that. Beautiful. I mean, so far I think we covered most of the stuff that for this shorter period of time, and I'm so pleased to have you here. And the question that I had as a youth, and you're active, mashallah, you have done your education here, so you have seen the deen is in front of you, the dunya is in front of you. I think the best formula is to have deen and dunya in one plate, being a balanced Muslim. That's the goal we want to be, right?
Indeed, we must be balanced.
Inshallah. One more question. We talk about love a little bit and where the real happiness coming from, So there's a lot of people, they're not happy these days, they're dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with depression, and all these challenges, especially the way the media, and it was, believe me, ridiculous. We watched a debate the other day between presidential candidate. Man, where are we going? You know what I mean? So now our youth, what they gonna think about it? You know what I mean? So the real happiness, we have to just show him the path of happiness is not, I'm just asking you, can you explain what's the real happiness on there is that coming from?
Inshallah ta'ala. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. It's really a very important question, happiness. Because in the end of the day, we're all seeking happiness.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we live in a world that is primarily materialistic.
Right.
And the messaging that we get constantly from our environments, from television, from advertising, from media, is that you will find happiness in the physical world.
Right.
Meaning that if you have the right relationship and she looks or he looks a certain way or has a certain level of income, you have the right car, the right home, then you'll be happy. And that never works.
Right.
It never works. Because happiness cannot be found in forms.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, Habib John. I remember when I was very young and the family came to America, and there wasn't a lot of wealth, and people were struggling to survive, but they were much happier than they are. And generally speaking, people are much happier in previous generation than they are now.
Yeah.
And we have more material prosperity than we've ever had.
Yeah, correct.
We have bigger homes, nicer cars, more toys, right? But people are less happy than they've ever been.
Right.
Happiness doesn't come from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness doesn't come from things you can buy. They may entertain you for a little bit,
right,
but it will not make you happy.
Yeah.
Happiness is something that's internal.
Right.
And really happiness comes from deep within. And I would say our happiness really comes from our peace within ourselves, our relationship with Allah,
right,
and our ability to be, I'll just throw this out, in the present moment.
right,
Not in the future, not in the past.
yeah,
To be here now, and to be alive now, like a child.
right.
Children are happy naturally.
You're right.
They don't need a reason to be happy. They're just happy
Mhm.
because they're in the moment. And Islam is about returning to that state of innocence, that fitrah that we were created with.
Yeah. Fitra.
Exactly. And spirituality, Islam is meant to lead us back to that.
Yeah.
To return to the state of purity, innocence. And really, once we learn to truly trust in Allah, when we have real tawakkul ilallah, real trust in Allah and dependence and reliance upon Allah, all the stress and anxiety we have, we lose it. We don't need it anymore. Because we realize really with firm belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider.
Right.
And I'll say one more important hadith
Uh-huh.
that the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned, also hadith Qudsi, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I am to my servants as they expect me to be. I am to my servants, to my abd, as he or she expects me to be. So the way we think about Allah and our actions that follow from that belief determine the results that we experience.
Right.
If we believe Allah is merciful and kind and generous and supportive, and we act based on that belief, it will be so.
Right.
But if we believe otherwise, then Allah will show us really what we believe. This whole universe is like a mirror. Our lives are like a mirror, and it shows us really what's inside of us.
Reflection.
Exactly, reflection. And the point is to be able to see your reflection clearly so that we can cleanse, purify, perfect ourselves and move closer to Allah. And that's why the pious of the early generation said, Man arafu nafsahu faqad arafu rabbahu. Those who know themselves are as they who know their Lord.
And that's what happened when you talk about happiness. Like you said, there's chapters, there's books, especially Imam Ghazali has the best book, Ihya Ulumuddin. The main thing is that our heart is such a tool, the way I look at it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a tool of communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not talking about physical, I'm talking about spiritual heart, So that blocks because we are, like you said, heedlessness, we are ghafil. And now the way we talked so far, we linked everything together. So you have to have Iman, you have to have Islam, you have to practice. If you, for example, if you don't do salah, if you don't do your praying, don't expect anything. Allah will change your condition because that's the purification of the heart, daily basis doing it. And still there's a condition to that. When you purify your heart, your intention should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make yourself closer. I'm not trying to re-emphasize and review whatever you said, but I'm trying to connect it for my viewers that they understand that out of this conversation, we talk about Islam, we talk about Iman, we talk about practice, and we talk about riyah and show off. And also we talk about tranquility and about khushu and khuzu. We do ibadah, that really you feel happiness and the taste in talking about it, right?
Absolutely.
Like you said, honey. And a lot of people say, do you know, we were in a halakha or something, I remember there was a majlis, and they said, can you tell me what's honey? What does honey taste like? And I said, I cannot explain it. So, okay, what about you? Well, I know it's good, it's sweet, but I cannot. See, this is the same thing. And if you don't taste it for yourself, you cannot explain it to others. But you could define it, how it is, but still you cannot go to the actual. So this is what I call it, love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that taste comes to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So,
and that's what changes the ibadah.
Yeah, exactly.
Allah said, وَمَا خَلَقْنَا الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I have created the jinn and men, human beings, for worship, for ibadah.
Alhamdulillah.
But that's what gives us happiness.
Yes.
When we are in that divine presence of Allah, it's like bliss. But it's not. But we can't experience that if we just go through these things mechanically. We must learn to do it with presence.
Alhamdulillah, the level of love, we talk about all these awliya Allah, so these people should learn these things because they side one side, just pray 5 times and go to Hajj, do zakat and Hajj, Siyam, but they're missing the main part of the main essence of their life and their deen, which is, we talk about it, love. And there's one share also, and I like this one, it said, وَاسْتَعْدَ كَائِنَاتِ كِإِن کار خانه ساخت. استاد کائنات is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مقصود عشق بود جهان را بهانه ساخت. So that means because of that love, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this jahan that we know. And we have to find out who's that love. And we know who's that. And because he cannot see himself. But he brought a role model for us. And he mentioned in the Quran, right? Rahmatul lil Alameen. Which is the only to one point, alhamdulillah, very nice to have you here, Brother Hassan. And inshallah, we're going to have more discussion in the future. I want you to talk a few words about your radio station you have to the viewers that they want to listen to you more often.
Sure.
Right?
Yes, so we do have a podcast, a free global podcast called Soul of Islam Radio. And you can download that on iTunes, or you can simply go to soulofislamradio.com if you're not on iTunes with a iOS device.
Say it again, is that?
Soul of Islam Radio.
Soul of Islam, okay.
Radio.com.
Okay, beautiful. Yes. And it's through internet, people can just tune in and listen to it.
Yes, you can definitely listen to it all online or through your iPhones or your other smart devices.
I personally listened to a couple sessions that you guys had. Very nice, very profound, beautiful, and I suggest the youth, if they watch this show, somehow they just refer to that radio, and there's a lot of good information and good knowledge, and essential knowledge actually. We all need that.
And we try to present it in a way that's not too academic, it's just normal talk.
Normal talk.
Just so an average person can listen into it and understand, and God willing, inshallah ta'ala, get benefit.
Like this talk?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Alhamdulillah. Brother Isan, I know you have a flight ahead of you, and I'm so pleased to know you through this. And actually, we started last week, but sound like I know you forever. I know you forever.
The hearts are
so
close.
These are the hearts. It's a game of hearts, inshallah. And may Allah give you success and real happiness that you're after and I am after.
All of us, I mean.
And at the end, I want you to do a prayer when we reach to that point. So, brothers and sisters, thank you for watching our special program with Ihsan Turabi, which is actually from Southern California. And he's got, whoever missed this, we talk about, he's doing workshops for retreat, and mostly mostly spirituality. And Ihya Foundation is actually, they offer good programs, and these are balanced programs, and they're going to give you the right and authentic knowledge and real knowledge of Islam. And so inshallah I will fully encourage everybody to listen to their radio, and hopefully we have this connection. We can once in a while bring you to the show, or maybe you could start something from Southern California. This way we could just pass this message, inshallah. And one day we are gone in this world, at least we leave something behind. At least it did some good, and inshallah may Allah accept it from us. Where they sound do a dua, because you're younger than me. I know your dua is much accepted by Allah subhanahu.
With your permission, Habib Jan, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. We begin with peace and blessings and love for our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and ask Allah Almighty to shower His blessings upon him, his household, his companions, and his inheritors, his ummah, and really the whole world, for the sake of rahmatul lil alamin. And we're asking with the grace and mercy and guidance of Allah that He keep us always guided on the straight path, and keep us humble and keep us sincere, keep us always benefiting from real and true knowledge that is of benefit. And we're asking with the grace and barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He heals us, that He heals our hearts and heals the hearts of our community, especially our youth. They've suffered so much. They're without a homeland. And may Allah heal that wound that's inside of all of us, that we've lost. We feel like we're displaced, but wallahi, in a sense, it's a mercy from Allah. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, this world is not our home. So if you feel that loss, we're walking in the footsteps of the Prophet. We are travelers through this world. May Allah strengthen our hearts, grant us strength and purity and love for His messenger and for His way, for the deen of Islam, the perfection of Islam, and grant us His pure and most blessed understanding of that religion. And may we be benefit to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, that when people look at us, they see goodness, and that they see beauty, and that they see light, inshallah ta'ala. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Bihurmatil habibi, bihurmatil surat al-Fatiha.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Ihsan. Really enjoyed being with you and company. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. انشاءالله بیننده های عزیز خدا کنه از این برنامه ما چیز استفاده کرده باشین، چیزهای خوب شنیدین از خداوند، از چیز شنیدین که داشت نواقص بود از ماست.